If I was going to quote George Orwell, I'd ask you this question. Are you ready for the revolution? The real revolution? Because as George Orwell, he told us, in a time of universal deceit, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is actually a revolutionary act. You see, folks, down in Argentina, a huge, huge win for the real right. The real right. That's what you saw down there. And it's an absolute victory for freedom. And for the people saying, oh, I'm not too sure about Milei and, is he with us on this? Is he with us on that? Look. Anytime you strike a blow against the left, you must take that as a victory. We are in wartime. Do you understand what that means? That means we need to have people out there saying, "You know what? We're going to strip Joe Biden off of that ballot. Why don't we look at stripping Joe Biden from the ballot in every single state that we control? Why? Because it's wartime. That means, I know that there's going to be people out there that are going to be like, "Oh, our principles, our principles, our principles." Screw your principles. Are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to do what needs to be done in order to succeed and achieve victory? Rhonda DeSantis, you run the entire state of Florida. Have you even considered filing a charge or filing a challenge to the Biden campaign, saying that he shouldn't be allowed on that ballot for treason, for accepting money from overseas, for bribery? Has Rhonda even considered filing a charge or a challenge to the Biden campaign to not allow him on that ballot? Why not? File it under the 14th Amendment. And they'll say, oh, that's not fair. That's not fair. That's against the rules. Well, Donald Trump, he didn't break the 14th Amendment. And yet they're filing a challenge. You see, this is what happens when you've got a bunch of rule followers in charge. I'm done with the rule followers. Those people in charge have to do what it takes. Maybe those people are fine in peacetime. Yeah, sure, whatever. They're great at contract negotiations, writing tickets, speeding tickets. Yeah, sure. But I'm sick of it. I'm done with the rule followers. There isn't time for that. The time is, we need a bull in the china shop. We need a bull in the china shop. That's what you're going to get down in Argentina. And that's what you're going to get on January 20th, 2025 at high noon, when Donald Trump is raising his hand with his entire family in attendance. And you know something? Milei is probably going to be there. Tucker Carlson is going to be there. Bolsonaro is going to be there from El Salvador. Vox is going to be there from Spain. They're all going to be there because this is a movement to take our freedom, to take back our freedom. And it shouldn't surprise you that they're cracking down on X, the platform. All the tech companies, they're bringing out these attacks against X, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they met with Xi Jinping the night before they cracked down on X. They met with who? Xi Jinping. The very same day they cracked down on X, that's when all the January 6th footage is released, and it spirals across the platform, X, Twitter. Are you paying attention yet? Draw your own conclusions. They met with Xi Jinping, these big tech companies. And then the January 6th footage is released. Of course, they're going to start cracking down on X. Draw your own conclusions, folks. And I'm going to tell you how this goes. I'm going to tell you how it's going to go. We're going to win. They're going to throw everything they can against us. But in the end, they know it's not going to be enough. And we're going to win and we're going to laugh in their crying faces. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. You can see me live in studio. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Argentina, big win. Huge win for the right. Elon Musk, he followed through with his promise. He says that he's going to take legal action against Media Matters. This is incredible. David, what's his name? I think it's David Brock. David Brock, the lawyer, the attorney who's waging war and cracking down on X here. He's actually the same attorney of Ray Epps. So Ray Epps, he's got a defamation suit against Tucker Carlson and Fox News, and his attorney is the same attorney that's cracking down. Are you Do you see this thing for what it is? Draw your own conclusions here, folks. So Elon Musk, he actually followed through with his promise to take legal action against Media Matters, officially filing his highly anticipated thermonuclear lawsuit. So the billionaire and CEO of X of Twitter accused the infamous leftist organization of attempting to undermine freedom of speech as well as deceive advertisers on the platform. So they're cracking down on X, the leftist organizations, Media Matters. And, you know, we've talked about disinformation and how the left uses that term, the word disinformation. They'll use that term to try to censor things on behalf of the regime. Okay. They'll say that January 6th, this footage, it's all disinformation. That's disinformation. And they use that term to censor people on behalf of the regime. The Hunter Biden laptop story, they'll say that that's all Russian disinformation. Okay, they used that term to censor. Now, there's an associated but different scam. So, disinformation, if you hear that term, it's a total scam. It's probably true anytime you hear the word disinformation. But there's an associated and different scam out there, and it's called brand safety. This is a scam, and it's this ridiculous idea that corporations are so concerned with their brand safety, with the way their brand uh, is perceived by people, by the consumer, that it's actually harmful for these corporations to have their ads appear to politically controversial content. Okay, so this is what Media Matters does. They deem something politically controversial. Controversial is determined by this left wing organization, Media Matters, left wing advocacy groups. They'll deem it politically controversial. And they have manufactured this fake problem of brand safety. To begin with, they're the ones who manufactured this idea because what they'll do, these third party left wing organizations, uh, like Media Matters, they'll write up these hit pieces directed towards the companies that have their ads on X, and they try to intimidate them into not advertising. So you've got Disney, you've got all kinds of different corporations not advertising on X because these left wing organizations, they write up these hit pieces directed at the companies and they try to intimidate them into not advertising. So this is what this is all about. Media Matters has been doing this for a long time where they write up these hit pieces and they try to get these corporations to not advertise. And they say that it's a risk to the corporation's brand safety. But brand safety is manufactured. This whole idea, this whole scam is manufactured by those very by those very third party left wing organizations. So it's amazing. I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning because I've had a lot of questions. Also, questions about Argentinians. Argentinians? Argentina. They elected this very based candidate. His name is Javier Milei. I think I'm saying that correctly. But 56% of the vote is what he got on Sunday. Today's show is going to get into Milei, who he is. Plus, Cardi B is peeved off about the New York City budget cuts. Now, she doesn't quite connect the dots to progressive policies, but she gets very close. And Cardi B, I think it just is going to take a little while uh, for her to connect these dots to see that these progressive policies, these things that suck in New York City, it's because you keep electing these progressives and these progressives keep enacting progressive policies. So I'm going to talk about Cardi B. And also, this was truly disturbing. And my brother, he gets on the phone with me last night and he goes, Kat, did you see this? And I was like, wait, what? And he goes, Joe Biden. He goes, he's flirting with a 6-year-old. Yeah. So at this Thanksgiving event for troops of all places, his handlers, Joe Biden's handlers, they kept their eyes off the president for too long. And allegedly, according to critics, Joe Biden started flirting with a 6-year-old girl who was in attendance at this event. So we've got to talk about that because it's weird. So Milei's opponent outpaced him by 5 points in the last month's race, okay, which led to a runoff that took place on Sunday, it was. So that's just a little bit of background about why this race was happening. So Milei's opponent, who is a leftist, Sergio Massa, that was Milei's opponent. He's the leftist, okay? He outpaced him by 5 points. That's not enough. So that led to a runoff, and it took place on Sunday. So I'm going to chat a little bit about Milei, how he ran his campaign, how what he ran on. He ran on radical economic reform. He's got a plan. I'm going to go through his plan, and he pledged to crusade against the creep of socialism in society. He is anti-socialism. He is a radical capitalist. He's a right-wing libertarian. So no, I don't agree with him on everything, but um, he proposed shutting down the central bank, which is something I do agree on. Abandoning the peso. I don't know how he's going to do that, but he's also going to cut government spending, which Argentina, as you all know, has an issue with spending. They have an issue with printing money. Much like the United States, they've got a Janet Yellen who's just falling asleep at the money printer button, and she fell asleep on that button. Janet Yellen. That's why inflation is so ridiculous. And I've got the numbers on just how bad Argentina's inflation really is. So we're going to chat about that. Milei, he won. He's the right wing libertarian in Argentina. Let's take a break, but I'm going to be on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You'll see me there. I've got a few things I want to chat about. Joe Biden flirting with a 6-year-old, also coming up in just about 10 minutes. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Share this out with your normie friends. We're going to be back in just a little bit. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. This is kind of disturbing. Joe Biden. This is probably the worst gag or the worst gaffe in history. I mean, this is the biggest gaffe of his career. He actually confused Taylor Swift for Britney Spears. So this happened when he was trying to pardon these two turkeys, and he I think the gag, like the joke, was supposed to be that the presidential pardon for Turkey is actually harder uh, to get than Taylor Swift tickets. I think that was supposed to be the joke here, but Joe Biden, he Bidens it up. And I don't know if he was ad-libbing or reading off a teleprompter or what came out was definitely not that joke. So I'm going to talk about how he actually confused Taylor Swift with Britney Spears, and I think is absolutely hilarious. That on top of him flirting with a 6-year-old girl in just a few moments. Oh boy. So Joe Biden, he leaves abruptly after this turkey pardon. And I think it's because he had the biggest gaffe of his career, like the biggest flub up of his career. He confused Taylor Swift for Britney Spears, and I don't know exactly how he did it. I think that he was trying to tell a joke, and I thought the joke was actually kind of funny. Um, he was trying to explain that a presidential pardon for a turkey is pretty hard, okay, because everybody wants to enjoy the turkeys on Thanksgiving, and if he pardons the turkey, then nobody gets the turkey. I don't know. Most people don't like turkey. I think it's dry. I think it's dry and I think it's gross, but he says that it's hard for a turkey to get a pardon from the president. And he was trying to make a joke about how this presidential pardon is actually harder to get than Taylor Swift tickets, which is kind of funny. But that's not how it came out because I don't know if he was ad libbing. I don't know if he wasn't reading the teleprompter correctly or what, but he Bidened it up. And what came out instead of this joke was terrible. I mean, it was not it was confusing. So we're gonna get to that. Plus, he was flirting with a 6-year-old girl at this same Thanksgiving event. This was a Thanksgiving event for troops. His handlers took his eyes off of him. Then he started to confuse Taylor Swift with Britney Spears, and then he also allegedly, according to critics, started flirting with a 6-year-old in the audience. So we're gonna get to that here coming up in just a little bit. But first, I was telling you guys a little bit about Milei, and this is a huge win for the right. Milei, his opponent, actually outpaced him last month in last month's race, and that led to a runoff that happened on Sunday. And on Sunday, Milei won with 56% of the vote. So a huge win. Javier Milei is a right-winged libertarian, and Milei ran on a few things. He ran on radical economic reform. He has a radical economic reform program and plan, and he pledged to fight against this creeping in of socialism in society. And he proposed things like shutting down the central bank in Argentina, which is a big, big problem. He also suggested he's going to probably abandon the peso, and he's severely cutting government spending. So I'm excited. Trump actually congratulated Argentina's Milei following his victory. Congratulations, Milei, on a great race for president of Argentina. Trump wrote this on Truth Social. He goes, "The whole world is watching. I'm very, very proud of you. You will turn your country around and truly make Argentina great again." I love it. Donald Trump, I can't wait. I hope that the Argentinian president or Argentina president's there, Bolsonaro, who's the El Salvador president, Vox, who's the Spain president. This is a movement to get our freedom back. And I can't wait to see January 20th and 2025 at high noon. You got Donald Trump raising his hand. I can't wait to see Tucker Carlson, Bolsonaro, Milei, all of them in the audience there. But a little bit about Argentina and what their inflation is like. So 143%. That is what Argentina's inflation has hit. You have to have a barrel of pesos, and you have to like a wheelbarrow full of pesos to just go buy a loaf of bread, like actually. And Tucker Carlson, and he actually went to Argentina and he showed his audience this. He went to go exchange $100 bill, a US dollar, and he went to the currency exchange and he put the $100 bill down, and they just kept bringing barrels and barrels and barrels of pesos out because their inflation is so ridiculous. The country has deeply subsidized healthcare, energy, universities, and public transportation, all of which are funded by the printing of more pesos. So they fund all of these social programs. They don't have any actual money. It's funny money. And somebody is there, like Janet Yellen is here in the United States, falling asleep on the money printing button. And that's really the only way the government can afford all of these social programs that are subsidized by the government. So, in other words, the government has been printing money for social services, which subsequently has crashed the economy. We're starting to see this in the Biden administration here. It's not nearly as bad. Our inflation is not at 143%. Okay, if you think our inflation is bad, I think it's at like 8 or 9%, something like that. That's the highest it's gotten under Joe Biden's administration. Uh, Look at Argentina's inflation. That's 143%. So, and look, I wish I hated or loved anything as much as this guy, Milei, hates the left. He hates the left. He's been seen on videos. He goes, "You can't give these leftards an inch." He's quoted saying that in an interview, and then he clarified what he meant by leftards because the interviewer had asked him, "What do you mean by leftards?" He goes, "The collectivists, the socialists." So he is a self-described anarcho capitalist, and he's promised to slash public spending and abolish the central bank. The central bank, they're the ones in charge of the money printing. Okay, so Milei is actually kind of insane. And he's got 5 English Mastiffs, 4 of which are cloned. Yes, you heard me correctly. He's got these big, big dogs, and he's got 5 of them, and 4 of the 5 are actually clones of the first one, of the 5th one. So he lives with 4 clone dogs. That's kind of insane. He was like a former rock star. He was also a former sex coach. He was a soccer goalie at one point. A also is a self-described admirer of Donald Trump. Plus this guy has some wicked sideburns. Go look up a picture of him. He kind of looks like Ebenezer Scrooge. um, and I love this video. And look, I don't care about his personal life. I really don't. I don't do personalities. I do policy and I do, hey, is this guy going to be good for the public? He hates the left. Okay. And the public elected him. And I think that a lot of people are just so sick of this stuffy politician thing where, they're polished, and that's actually a turnoff to a voter. If you come in here and you're a polished politician and you've got a suit and you're stuffy, and I'm sorry, I don't really care for your stuffy lifestyle. I care about, the policies, and if you have crazy hair or a weird lifestyle or weird dogs, I don't really care. And I think we've moved past this, hey, we need to have this stuffy politician who's polished idea in our heads. But anyway, there's this video that I love of Milei, and he's going through and he's looking at all these departments. There's like this Ministry of Gender Studies, and he goes, gone. And he goes, Ministry of Public Works, gone. And he's cutting all of these government programs, these departments. And I just love it. I love it. And look, if something seems to be going well in this centralized economy, if it seems to be doing well, you see the left point to it as a success. Okay. So, like socialized healthcare or something, a lot of leftists will point to Canada and their healthcare and, how their diabetes medication is like super cheap. Okay. Just give it some time because all of these policies and things that come from a centralized economy eventually turn to garbage. It'll turn into garbage. Since the 1980s, the central bank in Argentina has had loose rules when it comes to printing pesos. They don't have any rules. They haven't put any kind of restraint on themselves. And a lot of these socialist countries start out printing money for these social programs, and it's actually not bad in the beginning, but then you start to see the negative effects like inflation at 143%. It takes a generation, maybe 2 generations to see this, but it's not good since the 1980s. So it's what, 2023 now? So it's taken from 1980 to 2023 to see a 143% rise in inflation. So when it comes to policy, what does Milei want to do? People are scratching their head. Who is this Milei guy? Who is this Milei guy? Well, here's what he wants to do. He wants to abolish the Argentina central bank, get rid of him, get rid of him. He also wants to cut 55% of the interior ministries. Now, you're probably wondering, what is that? Those are like departments of education. So it's the equivalent of the Department of Education here in the United States. So he wants to cut a lot of these departments that don't really do much, but virtue signal. So he also wants to cut retirement and pension funds. He also wants to switch to the American dollar, which is a bit more stable than the peso. So I don't blame him for doing that. I don't know how that's going to happen. I'm not an economist. But he also wants to increase trade with the United States and have a better relationship with the United States, and he wants to cut off all of these terrible relationships that Argentina currently has, like Brazil. They're a lefty suckhole, and he says that they actually drag them down. So he wants to sever this relationship with Brazil, and he has also talked about stopping their dependency on China. So according to AP News, a politician expert or political expert, they thought that he was not going to become president. They said that he had um, no real shot at becoming president. Does that sound familiar? Now, my one concern here in Argentina is that they don't have a constitution. That's why it lends itself to extremism, fascism, jailing your political dissent, people who don't agree with you. I could see Milei possibly doing that. I don't think he will. I could see it happening, though, if they don't get this constitution. Being that he's going to be working with the United States a bit more, perhaps they will get something like a constitution. The Constitution helps prevent things like extremism, fascism, and jailing up your political dissonance. It happens a lot in South America, and it happens a lot more in Europe. It doesn't happen here in America. The closest thing here in America that we've had to fascism is actually President Joe Biden, who jailed all of the J6ers, but we haven't seen anything quite like fascism or extremism because here in America because we have something called the Constitution. We're starting to see it because Joe Biden is a freak and and he jailed all of his political dissidents. He's trying to throw people off of the ballot. That's a concern. That's actual fascism. That's actual extremism. And without a constitution, we might see Milei lean that way. But I don't know. I don't know who he is exactly. I just know that he's a bull in a china shop, and that's what Argentina elected. Who they elected, a bull in a china shop, and he's going to go through and he's going to cut where things need to be cut, and he's going to abolish this central bank because they are they're a nightmare. They just fell asleep at the printing button and they printed money to pay for all of these social programs, and it screwed them in the end. So we're going to come back. Few things I want to talk about. Joe Biden flirting with a 6-year-old girl. That's odd. Um, uh, and then I also want to chat about how Joe Biden, probably his biggest gaffe in his career, was mistaking Taylor Swift for Britney Spears. I'm back next. Yeah, well, our funding of the Department of Education, big no-no. These people are just we're printing money. That's the problem, is printing money. Janet Yellen is the woman who's behind the central bank here at the federal. bank here in the United States, and she just falls asleep at that button. And now we're starting to see a little bit of what is going on in Argentina. And Tucker Carlson, he did this amazing bit and actually did an entire episode where he goes into detail about Argentina and how they were once prosperous, but in the 1980s, that's when it all went to hell because that's when the central bank came into existence. And then they started printing money for all of these social programs, all of these departments, like the Department of Ed, um, the DHS, there's so many different ones here in America, and what we need to do is find out the ones that are necessary and provide a necessary service. But the other ones, if they're just social programs, then we need to cut them. And that's what Milei is planning to do, which I'm so excited for. And isn't that odd? Like that's an actual thing where his mastiffs are cloned. So I mean, I kind of get it. I love dogs, and I loved a dog that we had, and if we could have a dog just like that for the rest of my life, our dog Prince, he was a German Shepherd, and I just loved that dog. If I could clone him, I would totally clone him 6, 7 times. But yeah, this guy actually cloned his dog and lives with 5 English Mastiffs. I think that this guy is wild. He's a bull in the china shop. But what do you think? Are you comment below. Are you about the stuffy politician? Do you think that there has to be some level of decorum if you're going to be a politician? I do believe that there needs to be some sort of maturity. Okay, John Fetterman wearing sweatpants, it's kind of disgraceful to the Senate. Um and I think that there should be some sort of, dress code, some sort of decorum. But I don't know. I'm done with the whole stuffy politician thing. And Milei is not a stuffy politician. He says what he says. I mean, there's some things I can't even say on air. I'll tell you guys what he said. He called leftists little shits. He called them little shits. And the interviewer, when he said that, he goes, "What do you mean, little shits? What?" He goes, "Why would you call them that? Why would you call leftists that?" And he goes, "Because they are." And I was like, "Whoa, bull in the china shop." And like I said, the time for war is here. I'm really getting sick and tired of these people, these rule followers, okay? And I point to this, Ron DeSantis, Rhonda. I mean, you control the state of Florida. You can have um you can actually file a charge, or you can challenge the Biden campaign when it comes to being on the ballot. That's what they're doing to Donald Trump in Colorado. And um he's not filing. I don't even think he's even considered filing a charge or filing a challenge to the Biden campaign to not allow Joe Biden on the ballot. And you're probably wondering, what kind of challenge? What did Joe Biden do? Well, let's start with treason. I mean, accepting money from overseas for bribery, and like, why not file it under the 14th Amendment? And I know people are going to say, "Oh, that's not fair. That's not fair. That's against our principles. That's against our principles." Screw your principles. Uh, no, we need to file a challenge. And, these people, Ron DeSantis and the like, Nikki Haley, they're rule followers. And that might be good for when you're doing like a contract negotiation in times of peace, but we are in a time of war and we need bulls in the china shop, okay? And that's what you're going to get in Argentina. And really, we're in wartime, and Ron DeSantis should wake up and challenge the Biden campaign and say, "You know what? We're going to strip Joe Biden from the ballot." And we should be doing that in every single state that Republicans control. And I don't know why the heck we're not. Oh, wait, yes, I do. They're a bunch of pansies and they're a bunch of rule followers, and that's fine. Like I said, in peacetime, but peacetime is over. Cutesy time is over. And yeah, I don't know why we're not pushing harder to fight or to really win. And it shouldn't come as a surprise to you that they're cracking down on X now. They're trying to get rid of X. They're trying to take away X's advertisers. You need to know that this isn't a coincidence. Xi Jinping, as I told you, he was here for a few reasons. One of those reasons was to get Americans to understand that China is not as bad as people say they are. Okay, like straight up, that's what Xi Jinping was here with Joe Biden to talk about. Um, Joe Biden with that and AI and nuclear weapons. Joe Biden said that they came to an agreement that they both weren't going to use AI and nuclear weapons, but they also were talking about how we need to get Americans to think that China is an okay country and that China is not the boogeyman, okay? Uh, but Xi Jinping, he met with these big tech companies just a night before they actually started cracking down on X, Media Matters, and the very same day they started cracking down on X, this is the very same day where the Jan 6 footage was released and it spiraled out of control and it just spiraled on X. So, are you paying attention yet? Draw your own conclusions. And, folks, I'm going to tell you how this is going to go. We are going to win. Smash the like button if you're watching. I'm back. Good morning, Joe Biden flirting with a 6-year-old. Flirting with a 6-year-old. Yes. We're going to get to that. And make no mistake, folks, X is they're going after X. They're trying to shut down X, which is the platform Twitter. The regime is cracking down on this platform. And make no mistake, this is not a coincidence. The night before they started cracking down on Twitter, they actually met the big tech companies. They met with Xi Jinping. Why was Xi Jinping here? He was here for a few reasons. One reason was to discuss AI and how it is going to interact with our nuclear systems, our nuclear weapons programs, and China's nuclear weapons programs. That's why he came to San Francisco. He also came to talk about green energy, and he came to talk about how America uh, is not the Americans. They don't believe that China is a good country. We don't believe that. It's because they're not. I've told you the story of, I actually know somebody who adopted Chinese daughters. And the reason why they went out and adopted Chinese daughters is because they were actually killing the Chinese government, the CCP. They were killing like second born daughters or something like that to do population control. That's what this country does. Those are the facts. They have suicide nets on these big, big towers where they force young children to work on Apple iPhones and they force labor, and these people were jumping out of the building because they didn't want to work for the CCP. And they're, up at all hours of the night, slaving away over these iPhones. And people were actually jumping out of these buildings. So, what did the CCP do? They didn't want people committing suicide. So, they put suicide nets around these buildings where they force people to work. And like that's that country. Okay. So, when you have this fear of the CCP, of communism, that is a genuine fear. It's not xenophobia. It's not. This is an actual fear rooted in evidence. Okay, you have a concern, much like transphobia, much like Islamophobia. I've told you those numbers before. When there's a community, the trans community, when there's an entire community where their suicide rate is so high, it's higher than those who were killing themselves in the concentration camps and in the gas chambers of Auschwitz during the Holocaust. It's higher than that, folks. When an entire ideology, when an ideology gets an entire community to kill themselves, that's concerning to me. And yes, I fear that ideology. I fear the communist ideology because it gets people to kill themselves. It's terrifying. Islamophobia. Okay, they're going to try to paint you with that term. The ideology of Islam is kind of scary in that there was, I think it's like 1.8 billion Islamic people in the world. And of those 1.8 billion people, there was a survey, and the numbers are out, folks. About 8% of those 1.8. So that's about, I think it's like 190 million Islamic people have come out and have said on a survey, right, in this survey, that they are for violence against innocent people if it's furthering the Islamic religion. That they aren't against um, violence when it comes to just um, citizens if it furthers the cause of Islam. Okay, there have been surveys where people have actually come out with their mouths and have said, "I am actually for violence against citizens." So this is a rational fear. There are irrational fears out there, like being afraid of the dark. The dark has never killed anyone, okay? Being afraid of spiders. Spiders don't kill people at alarming rates. A lot of them aren't even venomous, but people are still afraid of them. So, like I said, phobia. It's not xenophobic. There is evidence that the CCP is truly, truly evil. Communist ideology is truly, truly evil and it kills people. Communism kills, and that's statistically proven. So anyway, Xi Jinping, he met with Joe Biden like a week or so ago. He also met with these big tech companies, and now these big tech companies are going after Twitter, X, and I don't think it's a coincidence either that they met with Xi Jinping the night before they went after X, Media Matters, and then the day of January 6th footage getting released, spiraling out on this across this platform of X. I don't think that this is all a coincidence. I think that they think that you're not paying attention. Draw your own conclusions, folks. I do have to take a quick break, but like I said, we are going to be getting to Joe Biden and how he was flirting with a 6-year-old girl. Yes. According to critics, allegedly, he was flirting with a 6-year-old girl. Um, I've got an issue here because we really need to find a way to prevent him from creeping on little girls. You would think that they would have found a way to do this, the handlers, but it seems like they haven't. I'll be back here next on the Buzz, Cities 92.9. So I was asking folks to comment in the comment section. Hey, are you about the stuffy politician, the polished look? I feel like appearances are somewhat important, but I'll take a dude that's making the right decisions, dressing casually over a distinguished person screwing up our policies. Yeah, it boils down to policy. Um, Ryan, that's what they are. They're little yes. So, not Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro, the El Salvador president. So this is a movement, folks. We've got Vox from Spain. We've got Bolsonaro. We've got now in Argentina, Milei. So this is a movement. There is a huge movement for freedom, afoot. And Bolsonaro, he is actually one of my favorites so far. So they had a really big issue. He was the president of El Salvador, and El Salvador, they had an issue with gangs. And he actually made it to where where El Salvador is doing these huge prisons where they're like mass prisons. And he's been going around and he's been jailing people with even just gang tattoos. If they have gang tattoos on their face, then that is an automatic 10-year sentence or something crazy like that. And people are like, that's you know, a violation of human rights. The Washington Post and the like, they all got out there and they were like, how could the El Salvador president do that? Um, when you got gang tattoos like that in El Salvador, if you're not a gang member and you have those tattoos, you will die. Like the gangs will come after you and kill you. Um, so the El Salvador president said, you know what? We're just going to jail these people if they've got gang tattoos and we're going to crack down on crime. Guess what happened? The El Salvador president gets elected. He's already cut crime in half, the homicide rate in half. So he's been able to save lives through a policy where he imprisons gang members and he imprisons them for a long time in these mass prison camps, and he's tough on crime. So you know, I'm all for the El Salvador president. I'm also all for the Argentina president. I think that he's going to make got good policies. Now, whether or not he becomes an extremist fascist, we'll have to see. I don't think so. What concerns me, and my only concern, is that those in South America, even in Europe, they don't have something called a constitution like we have here in America. And when you don't have something like that, that could breed extremism or fascism. But we'll have to see. Time will tell. Time will tell. But yeah, I hope that the Argentina president is there in attendance January 20th, 25 at high noon. President Donald Trump is going to raise his hand with his whole family in attendance, and we're going to win. We're going to win. Ron DeSantis and others and the like, they need to get with the program and they need to stop being rule followers and they need to start realizing that we are in wartime. And in times of war, you have to do what needs to be done. Um, and what we should be doing in the states that we control, we should be knocking Joe Biden off of that ballot. And, I'm going to get to this story. And yeah, we can joke and say that he's creeping on little girls and he's a weirdo. But at the end of the day, it's not really a joke. Once it becomes a habitual problem and once it becomes the norm, that's when you're like, okay, is this guy an actual pedophile? I mean, what he does here to this 6-year-old girl is nonsense. He claims that she looks like she's 17 years old, the age of consent in some states. And the president, he exhibited an Oedipus complex by comparing the little girl to his mother because they both had the same name. So this is a really weird exchange that he has with this little girl. And you can even see the horror on Jill Biden's face, Dr. Jill, sorry. Dr. Jill. You can see the horror on her face. Um, and I think she really needs to be under investigation for elder abuse. That's my opinion. She should be definitely under investigation for elder abuse. Um, but you can watch the horror on her face as the events unfold before her, where this man, Joe Biden, is actually flirting with a 6-year-old. Like, there's no other way to truly explain this other than say that he's flirting with a 6-year-old girl. And, I know that Jill probably the reason why she is looking on in terror. She's like, "Oh my the right-wing media, the right-wingers like Kat Peterson, they're going to have a field day with it." You're right, Jill. Here we go. Okay, there's no other way to truly explain this other than, to say that Joe Biden was actually flirting with a 6-year-old girl. Yes. Our president, the commander in chief, was flirting with a 6-year-old girl. And at some point, we've got to get Joe to stop creeping on these little girls, or we've got to actually investigate him for being a pedophile. Like his own daughter, the diary, the Ashley Biden diary, she describes in the diary that he used to take showers with her and have bath time with her, and she was very uncomfortable. She discloses this in her diary at a much later age. Um, they need to find a way to prevent him from creeping on little girls because it's get enough is enough. At this Thanksgiving event for troops, handlers, they took their eyes off Joe Biden for a couple of seconds, and that was long enough for him to allegedly, according to critics, start flirting with this 6-year-old girl in attendance. There's no other way to really describe this other than that he was flirting with this 6-year-old girl. So I'm going to share this exchange with you. Pay attention if you're watching on the stream. Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden's face. I think that really says it all. Here we go.
Thank you, thank you. And I love your ears. I love them. They're really cool. What's your name? Catherine. Catherine, what a beautiful name. That's my mommy's name. Well, nice to see. How old are you? 17? 6. Thank you, thank you. And I
No, 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 stop it. Make it stop. That's so disturbing. Like I said, Dr. Jill Biden, let me make sure I get that out there. The caregiver of Joe Biden, she was looking on in horror. And truly, I believe that Jill Biden should be investigated for elder abuse, but hasn't, she's not under investigation yet. It is my opinion that she should be. But Jill, she watches the events unfold and you see the horror in her face. It's probably because she knows that right-wing media, myself, Kat Peterson, that we were going to have a field day with it. Handlers, they tried to take the president away, but not before Joe Biden expressed his disapproval that he wouldn't be able to watch a movie with children. Yes, I've got more clips from the Thanksgiving event. Truly disturbing. We're going to talk about it here on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. How the bleep is a 6-year-old getting mistaken for a 17-year-old? Now, I don't know if he was joking or what. I'd imagine that he was joking or trying to do this weird joke. But he is almost married or almost 80 and he's married. I don't know why in the world he would be making a joke that is that distasteful. Um 6 years old? I thought you were 17, it's a weird joke, and I don't think that he is, uh, I don't think that he is in his right mind, and I truly do believe that Joe Biden should be investigated for pedophilia and crimes against children. We're back in just about 5 minutes, just hang out for a bit and smash the like button if you're watching. I love it. That's a 6-year-old mistaking her for a 17-year-old. Joe, you're 80 and married. What's wrong with you? Why are you flirting with a 6-year-old? So, look, when I see Joe Biden, I think he's the IRL, like the in real life walking embodiment of Herbert the pervert from Family Guy. Do you guys remember this? Smash the like button if you know who Herbert the pervert is from Family Guy. But Joe Biden groping little girls and making creepy comments. I mean, this isn't the first one, okay? There was a creepy comment about some girl in pigtails, and he also told an audience how much he likes it when kids dance in front of him, which was odd. His handlers, they need to get it together. Okay. And look, this is a word of advice to concerned mothers out there. Um, and don't take your kids to if you ever find you being invited to the White House, don't take your kids to the White House, and if you do, get them trained in self-defense. There's actually this funny clip of a girl actually karate blocking Joe Biden from touching her, and it was like this little toddler, and she like karate blocks him. It was actually at the Thanksgiving pardoning in 2021 when that happened. So um if you're a parent who's invited to an event at the White House, we here at Cities 92.9, we urge you to proceed in caution. Do not go to the event and proceed with caution and take some self-defense training. MAGA is global. That's coming in from a texter on the YouTube channel. That's 309-451-9299 is our text line if you want to be a part of the show. But Ryan, he says, MAGA is global, and you're so right. It was Bolsonaro. I love Bolsonaro. He's from El Salvador. He actually cut the homicide rate in half just this short while of him being president. And they said, he's committing human rights violations by having these huge prisons. They're just ginormous mega prisons. And he's been jailing and imprisoning these gangsters, gang members, people with gang tattoos. If you have a gang tattoo, 10 years. The El Salvador president, that's Bolsonaro. Now we've got the Argentina president, Milei. I love Javier Milei. He's kind of an odd duck. The sideburns and his weird lifestyle. I mean, it's not too much of a turnoff because when you hear about his policy, how he wants to abolish the Argentina Central Bank, he wants to cut 55% of these interior ministries, which are a lot of things like these social programs. For the United States, it would probably be the equivalent of the Department of Education. He wants to cut 55% of these interior ministries. He also wants to cut retirement and pension funds. He also wants to switch over to the American dollar, which is a bit more stable than the peso, which was what they've currently got. But like I said, inflation in Argentina, 143%. If you think inflation is bad here, for perspective, inflation is at like 8%, maybe 9%. In Argentina, the inflation has hit 143%. The country has deeply subsidized healthcare, energy, universities, public transportation, all of which are funded by the printing of more pesos from the central bank. So, in other words, to chalk this all up, it's the government is printing money for social services, and that has caused a crash to the economy. That has subsequently crashed the economy. Joining me to unpack it all, you know him, you love him, Mike Coolidge. It's the Patriot Power plug. We're here to talk about Milei, the new Argentina president. He's a kind of an odd duck. Did you know that he had 5 English Mastiffs, Mike?
No, not before this big media story of the last couple of weeks. He is extremely interesting. And isn't it funny? He's got that crazy hair too, and something so distinctive. Kind of reminds you of President Donald Trump, who didn't come on the scene just in 2015. Obviously, people knew him for years and had his own branding and everything for a long time before he ran for president. But so much of that had to do with his distinctive look and way of talking. And this guy has got the same kind of, what do the kids call it these days? Riz, Cat? He's got the Riz.
Yeah, the Riz. Yeah, the sideburns. And I don't know. I think that a lot of people, especially in my generation, so you're Gen X, I'm Gen Z, right? In my generation, the whole, and I get the John Fetterman thing, and I really wish he would conduct himself in, a polished way, or at least in a way of a proper decorum. But I think that my generation, Gen Z, we just really don't care if you're in a suit and tie. We don't care if you're a polished politician. We don't care if you're, got all the right words to say. We just care that you're authentic and that your policies rock. And
Yeah.
I think Milei's policies just rock.
I tell you, he was on Tucker Carlson, his X thing that Tucker does 2 months ago. Tucker, not surprisingly, a step ahead of so many other people interviewing this guy, seeing how he might blow up. And if you can indulge me here, Kat, I want to play these words he said. And yes, they're in Spanish, but I have it translated. Trust me. And
Mhm.
it's one of these things where, like, you can't tell at the time someone's saying something profound, but when you look back on it and then you see what just happened and what he just accomplished, getting elected to office, he encapsulates just not the dangers of socialism, but what we need to do to fight it. And by we, I don't just mean going out and voting. I mean everyone, and especially the business community. Let's see if this works. And yes, I do have the translation. So this is what he says to Person. Never embrace the ideals of socialism. Never allow yourself to be seduced by the siren song of social justice. Don't get caught up in that terrible concept that where there is a need, there is a right. But that can't happen on its own. We have to be prepared for this and wage a cultural war every single day. And we have to be careful because they have no problem getting inside the state, the government, and employing Gramsci's techniques, seducing the artists, seducing the culture, or meddling in education content. Again, sound familiar? It's exactly what's happening here in the United States. You need to be very careful, cut off their funding, and force them into a fair fight. And then he gets into what we need to do. He's like, at the same time, we have to raise awareness in the business sector that the masses are necessary. Milton Friedman used to say that the social role of an entrepreneur is to make money, but that's not enough. Part of that investment must include investing in those who defend the ideals of freedom so the socialists can make no further advances. And if they don't do it, they will get into the state and use the state to impose a long-term agenda that will destroy everything it touches. Again, sound familiar? So we need a commitment from all those who create wealth to fight against socialism, to fight against statism, and understand that if they fail to do so, the socialists will keep coming. Because what's the point? Since they try to leech off of others without working, they are tireless in their pursuit. Their motif in life is to live off of others, so they will never give up on this mechanism to take control of others' wealth, money, or income. So this battle must be waged unceasingly. We cannot take a day off, because when we rest, socialism creeps in. That's it.
I love it.
Isn't that
Milei,
something?
yeah. Well, one thing that I was thinking about, this morning, and I've been telling people, what we need to start doing is, I mean, they're starting this fascism where they're knocking people off of the ballot. They're jailing their political dissidents, and over in Argentina, they don't have a constitution like America does. We have a constitution. We're starting to see it though bleed it where they have a fascist control Joe Biden, where he's jailing his political dissidents. He's throwing people off the ballot. And I called on Ron DeSantis. What Ron DeSantis in states that we have control over, what we need to start doing is kind of playing the leftist game where we start to toss people off of the ballot like Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden did commit treason. I mean, he's taking money from foreign governments and he's taking those as bribes.
He
Under the
committed high crimes and misdemeanors. Absolutely. High crimes and misdemeanors, among them bribery. Bribery itself is mentioned in the Constitution. He took bribes. He needs to be thrown out of office, impeached. Absolutely. But yes, go
yeah.
on.
Yeah, well, and even further, Ron DeSantis or other states that we have control over, they need to say, hey, because of the 14th Amendment, I don't like it either. But this is where we're at. This is wartime. It's
Yep.
go time. And
100%.
we need bulls in the China shop. Donald
Yeah.
Trump, Milei's, Bolsonaro, Vox from Spain. Like, we need these guys. This is a global movement for freedom. And it's no longer a cutesy time. It's wartime. It's time.
You're right. And if people remember, just 7 years ago or 8 years ago, I guess it was 2015, Brexit in England happened before Trump got elected. I remember I was at a Americans for Prosperity a summit in Columbus, Ohio, and everyone was talking about Brexit. It like shook up the world. Like, my gosh, this right of center movement just happened in England. I wonder if that portends what might happen here in the United States. And sure enough, it did. It was 2016. I'm sorry. It was the summer of 2016. And then Trump, of course, won in November. And, you know, you have South Korea, Seoul, South Korea, one of the only major metropolitan area in the world that its city government actually just shifted vastly to the right from the left. They finally threw up their hands and said, enough of this. It's not working. This socialism, communism, Marxism, really. And they went the other way. This is not happening in a vacuum. It's something that a lot of people are waking up to. And I mean, even just this last week, when we see this new footage from the January 6th tapes, totally poking gargantuan holes in so many of the left's talking points that, you know, there was an insurrection and a fight against the right means a fight for democracy. And they're trying to all that stuff is BS. It's baloney. And people are finally waking up to it.
Yeah, well, that video from J6, probably the most boring video to go viral, because it's, you know what I'm talking about. It's the people who are like walking in the ropes. The cops are kind of just like letting them in, and it's just like, after seeing that video, and then you see the video where the cops, and I got the question this morning, hey, Kat, do you think that the cops were the ones who led them to, or provoked them? And an hour before, and I've talked to folks, then this checks out. I mean, with people that I've talked to who were there that day, an hour before they even went over to the Capitol. So they walked over to the Capitol to go listen to Donald Trump's speech. They were launching rubber bullets, stun grenades. They were launching non-lethal ammunition.
Yeah, there's guys with rubber bullets in their face on video, like protesters with rubber bullets in their face. They didn't shoot themselves.
Yeah, and you know, that's huge. I mean, before Trump even spoke, that's why they were there. Before Trump even spoke, they were launching these non-lethal ammunitions into the crowds, and I mean, that was
provoking. Yeah. They were trying to provoke, and that was their whole, and they've even admitted this, like, this is undisputed that there were federal agents as part of the protesters. And then this one leftist guy, which came out video now, this Antifa guy who was part of it, that this was good for the left. And it ties all into Nancy Pelosi not telling the National Guard, no, we don't want the National Guard to come. I got this under control, she said in so many words. She didn't have it under control means she wanted it to get out of control so they can do exactly what they did, say that this is what was an insurrection, worst since Pearl Harbor and 9/11 combined. And again, that whole narrative it's been destroyed for years, of course, but 3 years removed from it almost now, mainstream people are finally waking up to, okay, they better not try these talking points in the next couple of months when we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of the presidential race, because they're flat out lies.
Yeah, it's all just flat out lies. Well, we've got to take a break, but Mike Coolidge, thanks so much for joining me. Coolidge on Twitter, go follow him, folks. It's KOOLIDGE Coolidge. Thanks so much, Mike Coolidge, for joining me on Patriot Power Plug.
Happy Thanksgiving, Kat, to you and all of your awesome Morning Buzz listeners.
It is. It's Thanksgiving week. I can't believe that we're already here. Mike Coolidge, till next time, I'll see you later. All right, we're back, folks, and we're going to be chatting a little bit about Joe Biden. And I guess this is probably the worst gaffe of his yet. He mistaked. He actually was mistaken, and he referred to Taylor Swift as Britney Spears. That's pretty funny. That's next on the Morning Buzz. Good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We're going to be getting to Joe Biden. Plus, we're going to get to the urban philosopher Cardi B, who's gone viral over comments that she made about the New York City budget cuts. Best known for her songs about her overly lubricated lady bits. They're just disturbing songs. I can't stand Cardi B, and I think that her music is just terrible. But anyway, B is concerned about the budget cuts and what it means for her family still living in the city, what these budget cuts mean for her family. And she blamed actually President Joe Biden, and she said that he better not ask for her endorsement. So last week, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, he announced cuts to the 2025 New York City budget, and these cuts, what it's going to do, it's going to shrink the police department, it's going to slash funding for schools, cultural institutions, and libraries, supposedly due to the increasing cost of housing migrants. So Cardi B's address to the nation, she correctly concluded that the police cuts would lead to a decrease in public safety. Though then she followed up with that and she said that nobody cares about the cops so much. She goes, what's going to happen to my nieces? What's going to happen to my nephews? What's going to happen to my cousins, my aunts, my friends living in the hood? On top of all of that, there's a sanitation budget cut. So what does that mean? We're going to be drowning in rats. That's what she says. Then she confused the federal budget with state budgeting, and she attempted to discuss foreign policy, which it was just hilarious. We got to talk about Cardi B here next. Cardi B. Oh, Cardi B. So, I was telling you guys a little bit about Joe Biden and how he accidentally he made a mistake and he referred to Taylor Swift as Britney Spears. Big yikes. Probably the biggest gaffe that he's had in his career, and he left abruptly this Thanksgiving turkey pardoning. It was a Thanksgiving event where he was supposed to give thanks to the troops. It was weird because he very creepily was flirting with this 6-year-old girl. Experts say that, this pattern of behavior from this is a pattern of behavior from a man who critics say in real life is the walking embodiment of Herbert the pervert from Family Guy. Do you guys know who that is? From Family Guy, Herbert the pervert. I feel like that is a walking embodiment, that Joe Biden is the real life version of Herbert the pervert from Family Guy. But Joe Biden, he's was flirting with the 6-year-old girl. I talked about him. We're going to talk a little bit about how was mistaken, and he referred to Taylor Swift as Britney Spears, which is kind of funny. But first, I do want to talk about Cardi B. She's an urban philosopher, Cardi B, and she's going viral over comments she made about the New York City budget cuts. Now, she's best known for her songs about, I can't even say it on air. She's best known for these songs that are uh, about her overly lubricated uh, parts. Let's say that. Uh, that's what B sings about. Cardi B. She's terrible for young girls. She's a terrible influence. I think that this is just disgusting. The types of songs that she makes. The WAP song, and kids don't listen to that at home. If you're listening, do not listen to that song. But Cardi B, she's really concerned about these budget cuts and what these budget cuts are going to mean for her family living in the city. And she actually blamed Joe Biden. And she said that he better not ask for my endorsement. So last week, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, he actually announced that there was going to be cuts to the 2025 New York City budget, and that these cuts are going to shrink the police department, slash funding for schools, cultural institutions, and libraries. And this is all due to this increased cost of housing migrants. That's what they're dealing with in New York City. And now the American people and the New York City residents are going to have to suffer because their funding is getting slashed, and they're going to be allocating that funding to the migrants to house these migrants. And Cardi B, in her address to the nation, she actually was correct, and she concluded that, hey, the police cuts are actually going to lead to a decrease in public safety. But then she followed up and she was an idiot and she said that she didn't really care about the cops and that nobody cares about the cops. Well, people care about public safety, and having cops leads to an increase in public safety, and not having cops leads to a decrease in public safety. So, yeah, people care about the cops being there. But then she goes on, she says, what about what's going to happen to my nieces, my nephews? What's going to happen to my cousins, my aunts, my friends living in the hood? On top of all of that, there's a sanitation budget cut. So that means we're going to be drowning in rats. Yeah, probably. Chicago is actually the rattiest city in America, but New York follows closely behind. But B, Cardi B, she actually confused federal budgeting and state budgeting, and she attempted to discuss foreign policy. So again, here's what she said. She goes, how is there $100 million budget cut in New York for schools, libraries, police safety, public safety, and sanitation? Yet Joe Biden is talking about, yeah, we can fund 2 wars. So she makes a comment about funding these 2 wars overseas. So where Cardi is missing the point, she misses the point. It's that she admits the city is a suckhole. She admits that it's terrible. And the only way, it's the only way that, because people voted that way. The reason why the city sucks is because people voted that way, and she refuses to see that point. Okay, she refuses to see that this is who they voted for over and over and over again, and this is why the city sucks. This is why there's budget cuts. The city was already suffering from public safety issues. That's because progressive voters keep electing progressive officials who pledge to defund the police. Cardi B even attempted to speak out against that at one point, but then she was cyberbullied into taking her tweet down. She tweeted out about the defund police movement. So I do think Cardi is close to connecting these dots, but she needs to connect the dots that the reason why the city sucks is because of the progressive policies and because of the progressive people you and others keep voting for over and over again. The key issue here is illegal immigration. This is why this is happening. It's not even the 2 wars, okay? The state funding. Joe Biden is funding the 2 wars across, but that's federal funding. You're missing it. This is state budgeting. Eric Adams was the one who came out and mentioned it's not even, I mean, it's New York City too. So voters in New York, they need to stop virtue signaling. They've been virtue signaling for decades that they are a sanctuary city and that no human being is illegal. They need to stop virtue signaling because the problem is illegal immigrants. This is why the budget is being cut. This was a, this is the problem. They say, no illegal immigrants, no human is illegal, as long as it's not in their backyard. It's complete virtue signaling. And whenever someone would point out that that's happening in New York City right now, they would say, they would say, you're a racist. You're a racist if you are against illegal immigration. And these progressives keep getting elected in these areas because they virtue signal, because they say things like no human being is illegal. So Cardi B, to her credit, she sees the problem now. Not supporting Joe Biden is a good start, but what really needs to happen is they need to start getting Joe Biden to close down the border. And really, what she needs to start doing is using her platform to promote leaders who will actually fix the problem. Cardi B is not fixing the problem. She's just kind of putting blame on all kinds of places. And she's not seeing what the key issue really is. It's illegal immigration. That's why they're cutting the budget to house the illegals. Why did the illegals come to New York City? It's because the progressive officials, the progressive voters, they continue to virtue signal for decades that they were a sanctuary city and that no human being is illegal and blah, 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 blah. That's why you're dealing with this. So Cardi B, to her credit, I think she sees the problem now, but she really needs to start using her platform to fix that problem. I think she should. Not supporting Joe Biden is a start, but come on, Cardi, you're almost there. You're not quite connecting the dots. I'll be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz, Cities 92.9. I'm Kat Peterson, 309-451-9299. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Go ahead, smash the like button if you're watching. We're going to come back and we are going to chat a little bit about Joe Biden, how he he actually made the mistake and he referred to Taylor Swift as Britney Spears. So I don't think the Swifties should let him get by with that. We're back in just a couple of minutes. Smash that like button if you're watching. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We're going to be back talking a little bit about Joe Biden, a little bit about Cardi B. She's gone viral over comments that she made about New York City's budget. New York budget, it's a state budget, and they're cutting it. And she makes songs about her overly lubricated lady bits, if you don't know who Cardi B is, but she's concerned about these budget cuts. And she's not connecting the dots, folks. She needs to connect the dots, and she needs to realize this is a problem with illegal immigration, and this is a problem with progressive politicians. Good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. I do want to clarify something because I've been calling him the El Salvador president all morning. I did not mean to. It's Bolsonaro is the Brazilian president. Somebody on the right. He recently defeated, I believe, Lula in Brazil. So he is a right wing guy. I meant to talk about Bukele, Na Naib Naib Bukele. He is this El Salvador president, and I hope that Bukele, Bolsonaro, the Argentina president, who is Milei, I hope that Vox from Spain is there on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2025 at high noon. Donald Trump raising his hand with his entire family in attendance. I'm for these bulls in the China shop. Bolsonaro is going to be there. Vox from Spain is going to be there. Tucker Carlson, Milei is going to be there. I hope Bukele is going to be there. I like Bukele. So Bukele is the El Salvador president. Bolsonaro is the Brazilian president. I want to make sure I make that clear. I've been calling I've been calling the Brazilian president the El Salvador president. I get them mixed up sometimes because they both start with a B. But Bukele, I really like because he's cracked down on crime. A lot of people are like, you know, this guy is an authoritarian. If you go and you look up Bukele, I mean, they go after him, and he's actually cut the homicide rate in half because he's created something called mega prisons, which I'm so totally for. These jailing these gangsters, jailing these gang members who have gang affiliated. He said, guys, you need to jail people who have these gang affiliated tattoos. And he's cut the homicide rate in half by just being tough on crime. He's a right winger center right, I would say. Bukele. Then we have Bolsonaro in Brazil, also in the right wing camp. Bull in a China shop, Vox from Spain. Now we have Milei, and I think that they should all be there when Donald Trump raises his hand um, on January 20th, 2025 at high noon. I would love to see all of them just sitting in one row. But like I said, the MAGA movement, it's global. It is global. All right, go ahead, smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Before we took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about Cardi B. People are like, "Cat, who cares about what Cardi B thinks?" This is interesting because leftists, this just goes to show you how deep their head is in the sand. Okay? And Cardi B, she's finally kind of waking up. She's not connecting the dots quite yet, but when people like Cardi B start to connect the dots, that's when we're going to see this turning point in society where, I mean, here's Cardi B. She's all big mad about the New York City budget cuts, but she's not connecting the dots that, hey, the reason why this budget cut is happening in New York City is because of the illegal immigration. She's also not connecting the dots that, hey, it's because of progressive politicians. That's why they're cutting that's why this is going on, because these progressive politicians virtue signal and they say, oh, we're sanctuary city, and we're going to allow all the immigrants here, the illegal immigrants, and we're going to house them. Okay, so that's what Eric Adams is doing there in New York City. He announced cuts to the 2025 budget. They're shrinking the police department. They're defunding the schools. They are uh, defunding the libraries because they need to pay for housing these migrants that they virtue signaled about. And they said, hey, we're a sanctuary, come here. And then you start to realize, I don't want this in my backyard. This is dangerous. I don't want the illegal immigrants taking my housing away from me. And then, I mean, she's just not connecting that illegal immigration is the problem. Okay. And Joe Biden it is the reason why that immigration has run amok. Illegal immigration is a big problem. It's because the border is open. And she needs to be calling for that border to be closed. She needs to be calling for people to vote for people who will fix the problem. Cardi B, to her credit, I think she sees the problem. She just doesn't know the source. And she's not connecting the dots here that it's because of progressive politicians. That's why this is going on in New York City. That's why you're going to be living with rats. That's why you're living with public safety issues. That's why you don't have proper sanitation in the city. Okay, it's because of progressive politicians. Progressive politicians you've in the past endorsed Cardi B. So you need to be calling on people to really you need to use your platform to promote these leaders that are going to fix the problem. Because for all this time, you've been promoting leaders who caused those problems. Okay, Joe Biden abruptly leaving, the turkey pardoning. He's got this biggest gaffe of his career. And, if they weren't supporting policies that are destroying America, if they weren't doing that, and if they weren't attempting to prop up a corpse, a semi corpse, to do so, to destroy America, I might actually feel bad for the White House because they can't even let Joe Biden out to pardon turkeys without him adding to his list of senior moments. I'm going to call them senior moments. Okay. This one is probably the most unforgivable yet. He actually confused Taylor Swift with what's left of Britney Spears. I don't know if you guys saw that video of Britney Spears with the knives, but I feel so bad for Britney Spears and that whole that whole ordeal with her family. She needs somebody in her life to take care of her. This woman is unwell. But Britney Spears, and Joe Biden called Taylor Swift Britney Spears. Swifties, you better not let this go on. I am gonna play the clip here on the other side. This is the morning buzz. We're getting close to the 8 o'clock hour. Plus, I do need to tell you about Joe Biden, and I got to finish up this conversation we were talking about with the Thanksgiving event and how he was flirting with a 6-year-old girl because that's important. And then I will get into Argentinians and how they elected this based candidate, Javier Milei. He won with 56% of the vote on Sunday. Today's show gets into what his policies are. We're also going to talk about Elon Musk and how he has promised to take legal action against Media Matters. And he officially has filed something. It says a highly anticipated thermonuclear lawsuit. The billionaire and CEO of X has accused this leftist organization, Media Matters, of attempting to undermine freedom of speech, which they are doing, and they're deceiving advertisers on the platform. That's next. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. And what are we going to be talking about here in the 8 o'clock hour? Well, I do have to tell you guys a little bit about uh, Milei. Milei is the Argentina president, and he was the based candidate, Javier Milei. He won by 56% of the vote. And I do want to clarify again, look, I don't really get into geopolitics. I try to stay as local as possible, um, as it pertains to America. It's tough once you start getting out into these other countries. Who wins? Who doesn't? Who stole what election? So Lula is this leftist, and he actually won very narrowly against Bolsonaro. So I've been talking about Bolsonaro. I also talked a little bit about Bukele, who is the El Salvador president. I really like him, Bukele. And I'm talking about, what I want to see in 2025, January 20th, 2025 at high noon. President Donald Trump raising his hand, and who's in attendance. I'd like to see Bukele there, Bolsonaro, Milei. Milei actually won his bid here in Argentina. Now, Bolsonaro, I believed he did win. I believe he won. Now, he has been told that he can't run again until 2030 because he peddled disinformation about the election being stolen. Lula, you'd have to look into it, but Lula, I believe, stole the election, and he did this via the gangs that are in Brazil. And I mean, the criminals run things there, and Lula is the leftist, and he won very, very narrowly. I actually thought Bolsonaro won. I didn't realize that he didn't win, and I thought that they were going to overturn that election. He did not, Bolsonaro. But Bolsonaro, there's this movement. Okay, there's this MAGA movement. He almost won, and I truly do believe that election was stolen, much like the United States election, President Joe Biden and Donald Trump in 2020. But this Bolsonaro election, it just goes to show you that this is a MAGA global movement. Okay, so what happened in Argentina, what has gone on in Spain, what's gone on in El Salvador, Bukele uh, is one of my favorites because he actually cut the homicide rate in half there because he came up with this really cool thing called mega prisons. And he started jailing these gangsters. He started jailing these gangs with these gang affiliated tattoos, and he has locked them up for quite some time because they deserve it. Okay, they're criminals, and it's unsafe to have them running around. So there's just a few powerhouses globally that I wanted to mention here because we are going to be talking about Milei and his policies. Now, Milei, his opponent Sergio, outpaced him by 5 points in last month's race. So that's what kind of went on in Brazil. So they were so close that they had to have another election, a runoff, and it took place on Sunday in Argentina. So Milei actually ran this really cool radical economic reform plan. He ran on this plan, and he pledged to crusade against the creep of socialism in society. And he proposed things like shutting down the central bank. He also wants to abandon the peso, switch to the US dollar, and he also wants to cut government spending. So we're going to talk about Milei here coming up in just a little bit. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. We're also going to chat a little bit about Media Matters because they are going after X and they're going after X hard. But Elon Musk is throwing some punches right back. That's next. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for joining me. Biden flirting with a 6-year-old girl. We're going to get to that here too, as well. I do want to talk a little bit about Media Matters. So it shouldn't shock you that we've got Media Matters out there, this leftist organization going after X, and it's all very timely because Xi Jinping actually met with the president, President Joe Biden, San Fran, just a week or so ago when the streets were lined with gold and with red, these Chinese communist flags down up and down the San Francisco streets. Xi Jinping came and he met with Joe Biden about a few things. So it was to try to convince the American people that China is actually not as bad as people think. Uh, that's one reason why Xi Jinping came over to America. Another reason was to talk about AI as it pertains to their nuclear programs. Now, Joe Biden, he gave up some strategic leverage, I think, because we have better AI here in the United States. We're ahead on AI when it comes to artificial intelligence. We're better than China. And we said, oh, we won't use AI in our nuclear programs or nuclear weapons programs. If you agree, also, China, to not use AI in your nuclear weapons programs. And of course, China said, "Yeah, sure, we'll make good on that promise." But we all know that China is they're liars, and they will probably have AI in their nuclear weapons program, and we'll make good on our end of the bargain because we're the United States. But we know China won't make good on their end. So anyway, that was another reason why Xi Jinping met with Joe Biden. Another reason was for the green weenie projects here in America, probably to talk a little bit about even Goshen. So Goshen is a CCP electric vehicle battery maker, and it's going up here in Manteno, Illinois. And they talked probably about that and how the green weenie things. It's going to cost you, me, tons of money to have Chinese companies come here and build out things like solar panels, electric vehicle batteries, all kinds of these different things. It's bad for our economy. Um, so they talked about those three things. Now, one of those things was definitely how do we change the narrative? How do we get Americans to adopt the communist um, ideology? How do we get them to adopt the communist ideology and get them to like China? So that happened. And then that was the night that they met with big tech companies. These big tech companies then decided to go after X, and they started cracking down on the X platform. Shouldn't surprise us that the regime is cracking down on X shortly after meeting with Xi Jinping. Also, the same day that January 6th footage has been released, and it spirals across this platform X. And I want us to pay attention. Pay attention. Draw your own conclusions. Why are they going after this platform X? Why is Media Matters going after it so hard? Um, and one thing that I do want to chat a little bit about when it comes to Media Matters, we've talked about disinformation, and they use this disinformation scam, the regime, and they've been using that term to censor on behalf of the regime. So, for example, January 6 footage that shows police officers directing people into the Capitol and, pretty much acting as a tour guide, that would be labeled disinformation. And saying that the 2020 elections was stolen, or if you believe the 2020 election was stolen, they call that disinformation. And disinformation is this term that they use to censor individuals. Now, there's a different scam. It's an associated scam, but it's different, and it's called brand safety. So this is a scam, and it's this ridiculous idea where corporations are concerned with their brand safety. And it's this idea that it's actually harmful for corporations and companies to have their ads appear next to politically controversial content. This is an idea made up by the left and these left wing advocacy groups. Brand safety is made up, disinformation is made up. Um, this idea of disinformation being harmful. Okay. Since when did we say disinformation is harmful? This was cooked up by the left. It's a scam, much like brand safety. Just because a corporation's ad appears next to some political content, that doesn't mean that that's harmful to the corporation. Um, Now, the left wing organizations who say that it's politically controversial content and they deem it politically controversial or controversial content, they say uh, that that's a breach of brand safety or whatever. And they've manufactured this fake problem that's known as brand safety. to begin with. That's them. They manufactured this, and the way they manufacture this is that they do these hit pieces and they direct it at the companies to intimidate them to not advertise next to or to even be affiliated with a platform like X where politically controversial content exists. Okay. So we'll talk about that. Elon Musk has now followed through with his promise of taking legal action against Media Matters. Smash the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're back here on The Buzz. Mm-mm-mm. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. And if I was going to quote George Orwell, I'd ask you the question, are you ready for the revolution, the real revolution? Because Orwell tells us that in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. I'm going to tell you the truth. And you see, folks, down in Argentina, this was a huge win for the real right, the real right. And what we saw down there, an absolute victory for freedom, and we're seeing these little tiny victories for freedom globally. This is the Make America Great Again movement is going global. Um, and for the people saying, "Oh, I'm not sure if Milei, I'm not sure if he's with us on this, on that, on this, on this." Look, anytime you strike a blow against the left, that is a victory. So you have to take it as a victory because we are in wartime. Do you understand what that means? That means that we have people out there saying, you know what? We should strip Joe Biden from the ballot. Okay. That's what wartime means. We need to get every single state that we have control over. We need to get them to strip Joe Biden from the ballot. Why? Because it's wartime. And you're like, oh, Cap, but principles, principles, principles. They don't care about principles. Why are you willing to do what needs to be done in order to achieve victory? We need to do what needs to be done in order to achieve victory. And Rhonda DeSantis, he runs the state of Florida, and I don't even think that he's been considering filing a charge or a challenge against the Joe Biden campaign and saying that he shouldn't be allowed on the ballot. They're making it to where Donald Trump can't be in the ballot in these progressive run states. You need to file a challenge. You need to say that Joe Biden can't be on the ballot because of, let's just say, for treason, for accepting money for accepting money from overseas, for bribery. Okay, we have all kinds of evidence that prove that he accepted bribes from overseas. So why not? Why not, under the 14th Amendment, strip Joe Biden from the ballot? Oh, Kat, that's unfair. That's against the rules. Well, Trump didn't break the 14th Amendment. Yet they're filing a challenge against him and they're knocking him off of the ballot. I'm sick and tired of the rule followers. No more rule followers. We need people who will do what it takes. Okay, because we're in a time of war. Yeah, sure, maybe the rule followers are okay during a peacetime. If a contract needs to get negotiated or something like that, but this isn't the time for that. We need bulls in the china shop. 2025, I've been saying it all morning. I'd love to see the new president, Milei, of Argentina, there on January 20th, 2025 at high noon when Donald Trump raises his hand. His entire family is there, the inauguration. And you know what? I'd love to see Tucker Carlson there. I'd love to see the Bolsonaro, the should be president of Brazil. He should have been the president of Brazil. Vox from Spain. I'd love to also see Bukele, the El Salvador president. This is a MAGA movement and it's gone viral. This is a movement to take back our freedom and it's global. And it shouldn't surprise you that the regime is actually cracking down on X, which is where I want to start today. In the 8 o'clock hour, this platform, Twitter, X, they're cracking down the big tech companies. It shouldn't surprise you that they met with Xi Jinping. And the day after they met with Xi Jinping, they're going after X and they're cracking down on X. And it's also the same day where the January 6th footage was released and it spiraled out of control on X, went viral, all of this January 6th footage. And I'll get to that here in a second. But X, Twitter CEO, Elon Musk, he actually promised to take legal action against Media Matters, and he actually followed through on this. Now, I do want to talk about disinformation and what is going on with Media Matters. And I've actually dealt with this here personally. Okay. So I kind of understand what this is. Media Matters. Well, let's start with the left. The left, they have created this term. It's called disinformation. So they label the Hunter Biden laptop disinformation if it disagrees or if they disagree with it politically. Okay, they label things disinformation and they use this term to censor things. So they censored the Hunter Biden laptop story of it getting out because they said it was disinformation. So that's the left's scam. That's the scam that we're most familiar with. We understand when they say, "Oh, COVID vaccines, they cause myocarditis in young men." They'll say that's disinformation. So they're censoring stories or they're censoring studies that prove that. They say it's disinformation and they dismiss it and they're censoring any real information getting out there by labeling it disinformation. Now, there's a similar scam. It's an associated scam, but it's a different scam. And this is called brand safety. Now, this is the ridiculous idea that corporations are concerned with their brand safety and it's actually harmful for these corporations or these companies to have their ads appear next to politically controversial content. So I deal with this as somebody who, sells ads, or somebody who works at a radio station, right? So take it from me, I deal with this kind of stuff every single day. People are say, business owners, they'll say, "Well, Kat, I'm worried about my brand safety, about what my brand is." Say, just for example, you sell shoes. You sell shoes, and you're worried about advertising on Cities 92.9 because your brand safety is at risk. We have shoes, they're tennis shoes, and we've branded it as exercise or whatever. And we have a specific brand, and we don't want to taint the brand with this politically controversial content. Now, that's a ridiculous idea. Okay, this was an idea cooked up and manufactured by leftist organizations. Okay, so they deem it politically controversial content, okay? And then they determine that it's politically controversial content, and then the leftist organizations, these third-party organizations, will write up hit pieces directed at the companies in order to intimidate them into not advertising. We really dealt with this on January 6th. Now we know as a station, right? People calling up our advertisers and saying, "You need to stop advertising with Cities 92.9." Leftist, third-party leftist organizations, the Democrat Party here locally, that's what they did. And this is a weird term, brand safety. It doesn't make any sense. Just because your ad happens to be next to content uh, that is political that does not harm your brand. You know what I mean? It's this weird manufactured thing that they've come up with, the left, much like disinformation. They've come up with disinformation. Because it's disinformation, you have to dismiss it. Because this is brand safety, you have to not advertise, right? So we deal with this all of the time. Elon Musk is now dealing with it at a national level with X because corporations like Disney have pulled their ads from the platform because they don't want to appear next to somebody that has a politically controversial content or whatever, in fear of their brand safety being at risk. So Elon Musk, he says, "You know what? I'm going to file this lawsuit against Media Matters because they're the ones who have cooked this up. They're the ones who have manufactured brand safety, the idea of it. They have also intimidated people into not advertising." So he actually filed a lawsuit against this infamous leftist organization. And I need to tell you this, and I am going to get to the J6 footage because I've combed through it, I've understood it, or I understand what happened, and we're going to get to that. But Media Matters, David Brock is the guy behind Media Matters. Okay, Now he has a buddy, and that buddy is the same lawyer for Ray Epps. Ray Epps has a defamation suit against Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and the like, uh, in saying that he is a Fed. Okay, so he's got this defamation suit against Fox News. The guy that is representing Ray Epps is also the same guy who's buddy with Media Matters, David Brock. So I'm going to let you draw your own conclusions here. Okay. But yes, the January 6th footage. Let's get to that here. I have watched and come through quite a bit of it. Thank you to Matt Gaetz and Speaker Mike Johnson. I love it because Kevin McCarthy was speaker and it took him, what? I don't know how long he was speaker, like almost a year, to get all of the January 6th footage out. And it took Speaker Mike Johnson 3 weeks to get all of the J6 footage out there. The J6 footage proves that the Capitol Police, they were the agitators and they provoked the innocent crowds. Okay, so an hour before Donald Trump even spoke, they were firing into the crowd grenades, like these non-lethal grenades, non-lethal ammunition. People had rubber bullets in their cheeks, and that's actually before President Donald Trump spoke. So we're all led to believe about January 6th that Donald Trump spoke, and Donald Trump, and this is their whole thing because they've got indictments saying that this is what happened, that Donald Trump's speech actually incited some sort of riot or some sort of insurrection of the Capitol. But here's the thing, folks. People were unruly, people were upset and provoked into defending themselves, really, against the Capitol Police, who an hour before were firing rubber bullets and grenades into crowds of innocent people. They were just standing there. And then the police were the ones who fired off all of these non-lethal ammunitions. And there's videos of people's cheeks bloody with rubber bullets stuck in their cheeks. And this was an hour before President Donald Trump even spoke. And we're led to believe that Donald Trump caused some sort of riot, told the people to go storm the Capitol. That's not true. That it's just not true because you can see the video footage timestamped an hour before the actual speech took place of these Capitol police officers firing into a crowd of innocents. So, people have asked me, you've watched the footage, Kat, you've seen it. What are your thoughts about the Capitol police officers? I've actually got this here from Kevin Lauer. He says, what did they fire? And I told him, I go, stun grenades and non-lethal rounds. And then he asks, hey, in most cases of law, if the protesters have not displayed provocation, it's not legal to use any kind of force, which is true. These Capitol police officers, they didn't have to use any kind of force. And he says, do you believe from watching the tapes that police officers were the first to provoke? Yes. And it's not even just from watching the tapes. Look, folks, I've had friends who went there. Okay, I've got plenty of good friends that were there that day. I was supposed to go that day. Something told me that I wanted to stay home. I do believe that God told that was God working, because who knows if I'd be here today. I mean, Ashley Babbitt died, right? And she was the only person to die that day. And she was crawling through not even a window, it was like a door, and there were other people inside, and the police officers were actually directing people inside, and she was going through this door. And then the Capitol Police officer, Bird, I think is his name, he shot her at point blank range. She had no weapons, she was not armed. He had no reason to believe that she was going to cause harm to him or others. And she was just kind of crawling through this window, following other people. She was doing the same thing other people were doing. And yeah, she died that day. So anyway, people have told me when they were there that day, this checks out because they were, just kind of casually walking over to the Capitol. And as they were walking over to the Capitol, there was this other area where these protesters were gathered, and they were all walking towards the Capitol, or walking towards Donald Trump's speech. This is important. Walking towards Donald Trump's speech to go hear him speak. And they were walking from one place to the next. And they said as they were walking, they could hear the non-lethal ammunitions firing, and they could hear the grenades, and stun grenades. And this was prior to Donald Trump even speaking. Okay, so they were provoked in the very, very beginning. And I didn't know all of that. And I didn't really put two and two together until you watch the footage and then you hear the accounts of the people that were there that day. And you're like, wait a second. So they were firing these grenades, these non lethal rounds into innocent crowds, people who hadn't even, I mean, Donald Trump hadn't even spoken yet. And they were just standing there. So, yes, I do believe that the police officers were the first to provoke. And, yeah, this is something crazy when you watch. I mean, the most viral video right now on X is this video of the Capitol Police officers ushering people inside and people walking within the ropes here. So comment if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble, or if you're gonna text me, you can text me at 309-451-9299. What from January 6th was something that you believed and it's now different? You were deceived to believe something about January 6th, and now it's different. I'm gonna tell you what I believed about Ashley Babbitt. And I later found out via video, and this narrative change. I mean, this is incredible. I can't believe I believed what I believed about Ashley Babbitt. That's next. But Dan, buddy, you still aren't hearing what I'm saying. There's video footage timestamped. You have to watch it. I will send it to you. There's video footage that's timestamped that an hour before Donald Trump even spoke. So this is 1 o'clock. I guess Donald Trump was slated to talk at about 2 o'clock. And if you've ever been to a Trump rally, you know that he's always late. But Donald Trump was scheduled to speak at 2 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, okay, at 1 o'clock, the officers were firing off stun grenades and non lethal ammunitions, and people's cheeks were bloody. They had the munition stuck in their cheeks, in their faces. This is a video. And people were pushing back against the Capitol Police after they fired grenades, stun grenades, and ammunition into the crowds. Okay, so the Colorado court is wrong that that Donald Trump did not first, so many things wrong with that statement. It's not an insurrection, first of all. Second of all, Donald Trump definitely didn't cause it because people were getting unruly and pushing back against the Capitol Police officers prior to Donald Trump even speaking that day. So it's all around false. All around false. Have you seen the video footage of people walking in? Did I tell you about Matt? Matt, he was in the Capitol for 12 minutes and he was just walking around looking at the rotunda, pointing at things like a tourist. Then he walked out 12 minutes later. How is it a violent insurrection if you have Capitol Police officers ushering in people, telling them to come in, high-fiving even some of the Capitol Police officers, okay? There was high fives, there was fist bumps, like, what are you talking about, dude? An insurrection? How can it be an insurrection if Capitol Police officers are letting people inside? Do you know what the word insurrection means? Um, and like I said, I think the evidence is clear. Ashley Babbitt was the only person to die that day. She was shot at point blank range. And I mean, the timeline, the narrative, the timeline that the mainstream media has fed you, Dan, is wrong. They were firing at people before Trump even spoke. They were provoking people before Trump even spoke. You see, and yeah, I mean, talk to the people that were there that day. They'll tell you that they heard the grenades go off before Donald Trump even spoke. So they were provoking people before he even spoke that day. So if you really want to say, okay, let's say, put aside that it wasn't even an insurrection, but say it was. If you really want to put blame on somebody, I would put blame on the people who illegally, if this is true and if they can prove this, right, who illegally um provoked an audience, provoked a crowd. That's not that if the crowd does not um prevent or present any kind of if these protesters did not display provocation, it's not legal to use force of any kind. Okay? They were peacefully protesting. And if you want to place blame on somebody, it would be the Capitol Police, who prior to Donald Trump's speech was provoking people by firing grenades, rubber bullets, right? If you want to blame anybody, blame Pelosi. Pelosi, she was the one who said that she had everything under control. And by under control, she means, of course, everything's in place for things to get out of control. Um, so yeah, I'm curious, what did you believe about the insurrection, about January 6th that's no longer true, that has been debunked by either video footage or people's testimonies? Um, that breached and no charges. Yep. Jade Sacker was a CNN reporter and she breached, there was no charges, breached the Capitol. The actors and agents staged the breach and filmed all of the best footage, then opened up the doors and invited the crowd inside. Yeah. Um, yeah. And Dan, I question you, were you even there? Were you even there? I just love it when leftists watch. They can't stop watching. They can't stop listening to the Morning Buzz Cities 92.9. Dan, he says, Colorado court has determined, as a matter of fact, that Trump did cause the insurrection. Dan, you weren't listening. The whole time I was telling you that you can't say that Trump caused the insurrection if people were getting unruly, if people were pushing back against the police an hour before the actual speech that Donald Trump gave. So we were led to believe that the reason why people breached the Capitol was because Donald Trump spoke and his speech incited people to go breach the Capitol. That's not true. What caused people to breach the Capitol was the fact that the police, an hour before the speech even started, they were firing grenades, stun grenades, and non-lethal ammunitions into the crowd of innocent people who weren't being violent. They were protesting peacefully. And then the police provoked the crowd and caused all kinds of chaos. So you can't blame Donald Trump for what happened at January 6th, people going inside of the Capitol. I don't want to call it an insurrection because it's not an insurrection. People went inside and they trespassed like Matt did. He went in and he trespassed. He was there for 12 minutes. You can see the video, time-stamped and everything. Police State was the movie I watched this out of. It was incredible to see this time-stamped. He was there for 12 minutes. He was charged with trespassing. He was supposed to serve 6 months. And then the prosecutor comes back and says, "Hey, we're going to tack on a terrorist charge, and we're gonna try to get you in jail or put you in jail for 20 years." So Matt subsequently killed himself because he didn't want to serve 12 years. And then the prosecutor later tells the aunt of Matt, the family member of Matt, that those charges would have never stuck and that they just charged him with it anyway. And if he would have just waited another month, he would not have been serving 20 years. This was political grandstanding. This was something that the prosecutor wanted to do to make a political statement. And now a young man is dead because this prosecutor said, "You know what? I want to be a big bad prosecutor and I want to make a political statement and I'm going to tack on 20 years to this guy's sentence and charge him with a terrorism charge." And he died. He died. So there needs to be justice for Matt. There needs to be justice for Ashley Babbitt. Also in the Police State film I described to you, Ashley Babbitt, I thought, and what I was told by mainstream was that Ashley Babbitt scaled a wall and broke a window and jumped into the Capitol building, and that she was shot after scaling a wall. She did not do that. She was in the rotunda. Then there was this door, and it had like windows in it. The windows were broken out in this door, and she kind of walked through the door because other people were walking through the door. And I mean, when you look at this video footage of the door and the way it looks inside of the Capitol, I mean, she bled out in the hallway there, and she was shot at point blank range. I mean, I thought that she actually scaled the wall, punched out a window, and was, like, being violent. That's what I was led to believe. No. This woman was following other people into the Capitol, and she just happened to walk through a door that was already busted out. So, she was shot, for simply trespassing. I mean, that's really what it was. She was trespassing, she wasn't supposed to be there, I suppose, which I mean, you can even argue that it's not trespassing because that's the people's house. I mean, that's the people's capital. We pay for it. Okay, so it'd be like, you pay for your house and you walk into your house every afternoon after work, right? And that'd be like somebody charging you with trespassing. If you pay for the house, then you should be able to be at your house, right? But yeah, I mean, there were so many things that have been debunked about this January 6th thing, and the key point here this morning that I wanted to really just hammer was that Donald Trump gave his speech at about 2 o'clock that afternoon. At about 1 o'clock, Capitol police officers were firing grenades, stun grenades, and rubber bullets into a crowd of people. They were provoking people an hour before Donald Trump even began speaking. It wasn't Donald Trump who incited these people to go inside the Capitol. These people were provoked by Capitol Police, and Nancy Pelosi was the facilitator of it all. Do want to shift gears here. I want to talk a little bit about. Let's do Milei. Milei, he beat his opponent Sergio in this last race. Was held on Sunday, this runoff election. So a month prior to that, there was a race, and actually Milei's opponent was outpacing him by 5 points, but Milei managed to win in this election that took place on Sunday. Now, Milei, the Argentina president now, he ran on radical economic reform. He has a plan, and he is pledged to fight against this creeping in of socialism in society. And he's actually proposed things like shut down the central bank, abandon the peso, and cut government spending. Trump congratulated the Argentina president, and he goes, "Congratulations, Javier Milei, on your great race for president of Argentina." He wrote on Truth Social, "The whole world is watching, and I'm watching. I'm very proud of you. You will turn the country around, and you'll truly make Argentina great again." I know. Well, Argentina is sucky. It's terrible right now. The inflation, it has hit a 143%. Now, if you think inflation sucks here, it's 8% for perspective. Okay, so we have 8% inflation. Argentina has 143% inflation. So you need a barrel, like an actual wheelbarrow, to get the cash, the pesos, and to pay for, like, a loaf of bread, you need a lot of currency to pay for, like, 1 loaf of bread. The country has deeply subsidized healthcare, energy, universities, public transportation, and they're funding all of this by printing more and more pesos. Somebody has fallen asleep at the money printing machine, much like Janet Yellen is doing here in America. And what we need to do is pay attention, America. Pay attention. File this under Pay Attention America in your filing cabinet. Look at what Argentina is going through. And I mean, to put it simply, the government has been printing money for social services, and this has crashed their economy. It's just completely crashed it. And I love Milei. I wish I wish I hated anything or loved anything as much as this guy hates the left. Milei does not like the left, and he actually had to clarify when he called leftists leftards. He goes, "You can't give leftards an inch," when he said this in an interview, and he had to clarify what that meant because the interviewer was like, "What do you mean by leftards? Who is that?" And he goes, "The collectivists, the socialists." He's a self-described anarcho-capitalist, and he's promised to slash public spending and abolish the central bank. He's kind of a weird dude. He has 5 English Mastiffs, 4 of which are cloned. So he had 1 English Mastiff, and he cloned that Mastiff 4 different times, so he has 5 dogs. Uh, kind of odd. He also has these really weird sideburns. He was a former sex coach, he was a soccer goalie and a rock star, and he's a self-described admirer of President Donald Trump. And I love this. I think that more and more people are not really they don't really care about the hair, the crazy dogs, the weird lifestyle. They just care that he's not a stuffy politician and that he's gonna get done the things that he wants to get done. And what does he want to get done? Like I said, abolish the Argentina central bank. He actually wants to cut interior ministries. So an equivalent would be like our Department of Education. He wants to cut 55% of these departments of this bureaucratic bloat. Then he also wants to cut retirement and pension funds. Then he wants to switch to the American dollar, which is actually a bit more stable than the peso. But then he also wants to increase trade, have a better relationship with the United States. He also wants to cut off relationships with Brazil. Brazil is a lefty suckhole right now. We talked about how Lula is the president, and I didn't even really realize that the president was Lula. I thought that Bolsonaro won actually, and he Lula won by a very narrow margin, and I think that he stole the election. And Bolsonaro also thought that he stole the election. And in fact, the government there is so corrupt. It's run by mafia, it's run by gangsters. And I think the gangsters actually, the mob, they actually had these, a role to play in stealing that election. But anyway, so Argentina president, he now says that he wants to cut off dependency from Brazil and dependency from communist countries like China. So I'm very excited. I think that this is a win. Joe Biden flirting with a 6-year-old. We're going to get to that at this Thanksgiving event. He was flirting with this little girl. And I mean, very weird. I also have to tell you a little bit about President Joe Biden and this turkey pardoning where he actually confuses Taylor Swift for Britney Spears. That's next on the Buzz. So they need to find a way to prevent Joe Biden from creeping on little girls. The handlers, whoever's in charge of Joe Biden, they need to figure out a way to get him to stop this. At this Thanksgiving event for troops, handlers they took their eyes off of President Joe Biden long enough for him to allegedly, according to critics, start flirting with a 6-year-old girl in attendance. So while claiming he thought that the girl was 17 years old, the age of consent in most states, the president exhibited an Oedipus complex. Okay, by comparing this little girl to his mom. They both have the same name, I guess, the little girl and his mom. I'm going to share with you what how disturbing this actually sounded. Uh, here's the tape. Here we go.
Thank you. And I love your ears. I love them. They're really cool. What's your name? Catherine. Catherine, what a beautiful name. That's my mommy's name. Well, nice to see. How old are you? 17? 6. Thank you. Thank you.
Stop. No. Ah! So looking on in horror, you can't see it. Biden's caregiver, Dr. Jill Biden. Jill, who isn't under investigation for elder abuse, by the way. In my opinion, I think she should be under investigation for elder abuse, but she looks on in horror. She watches the events unfold, and I'm sure she's thinking in her head, man, those right winged media folk like Kat Peterson, they're going to have a field day with this. And you're right, Jill. His handlers, they actually tried to take the president away. The former Vice President Joe Biden, respect the office. Joe Biden expressed his disapproval that they wouldn't let him see a movie with the children. So he was supposed to watch this movie with the kids. I guess they were airing like Willy Wonka or something, but he had to go. So his handlers were like, "No, Joe, you can't sit around and watch the movie with the kids." I've got the tape. Let's roll it out. Here's Joe Biden expressing disapproval that he wasn't able to stay and watch the movie with the kiddos. Here we go.
And by the way, I like kids better than people. I wish I could stay and watch Wonka with you, but I'm not going to get to do that. And by the way, I like kids better than people. I wish I could stay and watch Wonka with you.
Kids are people. What are you talking about here, Joey? Kids are people. I don't know what you're saying. So experts, I'm not an expert, but experts, they say that this pattern of behavior from a man who critics say, and not me, of course, I would never say this, that he is the real life, in real life, the IRL walking embodiment of Herbert from Family Guy, Herbert the pervert. You guys know who I'm talking about, Family Guy. Look, if Joe Biden isn't groping little girls, he's making creepy comments about their pigtails and telling audiences how much he likes to dance with little girls. Don't believe me? I've got the tape. I've got the proof. Let's roll it out here on the Buzz. Here we go.
I'm coming back. And I want to see these beautiful young ladies. I want to see them dancing when they're 4 years older, too. So it's great to see you. So thank you.
What?
Good news is, for me, I'm here. The bad news for you is, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And I want to see these beautiful young ladies. I want to see them dancing when they're 4 years older, too.
He wants to see these beautiful young ladies dancing when they're 4 years old or 2 years old. Oh, boy. It's gotten so bad that concerned mothers have actually taken their daughters to self-defense training prior to meeting with the president. So actually, there's this tape, and it's hilarious, where this little girl, as she's in her mom's arms, and this little girl actually karate blocks Joe Biden at the National Thanksgiving Turkey Pardoning back in 2021. So the counter has been reset to 0. The White House is hoping that they can make it to the end of the year here without another incident where Joe Biden comes off as a creepy pervert. But we'll see. The counter set at 0. Let's see what he does today. With Christmas season coming up here, and the holiday season, as the Biden administration would put it. They don't, God forbid they say Christmas. Okay, God forbid they say Christmas. They say holiday season. With this upcoming holiday season, according to the Biden administration, it's going to be tough because he's going to be around more people. And look, if you're a parent who's invited to the White House, I'm here at Cities 92.9. I want to urge you to proceed with caution if you are going to the White House. Proceed with caution. I do have to take a break. We're going to come back. Joe Biden actually, I guess, he confused Taylor Swift with what's left of Britney Spears. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. This gaffe is probably the worst of his career. That's next. Oh my goodness. Have you guys seen this? Black Santa in a wheelchair. So somebody passed this on to me, a listener. And I guess they're selling these at Targets. This is so wild. Here we go. Let's look at this. And like, who are they appealing to? Like, who cares? I just don't understand. Here we go. I want a picture of it. I want to share this with you. Okay, here we go. This is Black Santa wheelchair. This is insanity. What? Hang on, I'll share this one. Oh, it's only $3. That's hilarious. I kind of want one. This is Black Santa Claus who's in a wheelchair. What? This is insanity. He's holding a fabric Christmas tree. Like, Santa is supposed to go down the chimney. How is he going to go down the chimney if he's disabled? I just don't get it. Don't mind me, folks. I'm over here on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble, and I'm purchasing a Black Santa Claus from Target. This is a Black Santa Claus who's in a wheelchair, by the way. And people are like, why are you against representation? Why are you against Target representing communities that look different from you, Kat? Well, no, it's not about that. I just don't know who they're trying to appeal to, because Santa Claus has traditionally been this white, jolly man who goes down the chimneys. Okay, this is tradition. This is just something that is a staple when it comes to Christmas time, and he goes down the how is Santa going to go down the chimney if he's disabled? Come on. It's $3 at Walmart. You can get yours today. I might actually get one and keep it here in studio just to make me laugh. But Santa in a wheelchair holding this fabric Christmas tree ornament. Yeah, and I mean, Jesse Waters brought it up on Fox News, and it was hilarious. They've also got a nutcracker ornament, and he's sporting a trans flag, and he's got the trans flag in his hands. The virtue signal. It's the virtue signaling for me. Like, who are you trying to appeal to? Santa Claus, he's a traditional staple where, he goes down the chimney. He can't do that if he's disabled. Like, let's just be realistic here. So yeah, I've got to take a break. Actually, that's the end of the show here. But before I go, I do want to play this. This is Joe Biden, and he mistakes Taylor Swift for what's left of Britney Spears. And folks, I don't know if you've seen Britney Spears lately, but she's not doing well. Just go check out her Instagram. But here's Joe Biden, and he mistakes Taylor Swift for Britney Spears. Here we go.
Now, just to get here, Liberty and Bell had to beat some tough odds, the competition. They had to work hard to show patience and be willing to travel over 1,000 miles. You could say even this harder than getting a ticket to the Renaissance tour or Britney's tour. She's down in, it's kind of warm in Brazil right now. Now, just to get
So he's in what I think the joke was supposed to be, and it was actually kind of funny. He was at the presidential pardon for this turkey. He was going to say that it's harder to get a presidential pardon for a turkey than it is to get Taylor Swift tickets. I don't know if he was ad-libbing, if he was reading off the teleprompter, and if it was too bright to where he couldn't see the teleprompter. But either way, he Bidened it up, and that's what came out. So you guys have a great rest of your day. Up next after me, it's Glenn Beck, Dan Bongino, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and Mark Lee Van Camp and Robbins. You guys can always see the YouTube video if you missed the show today on Cat Peterson 929 on YouTube.